an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Veronica Mars, Season 2, Episode 15, The Quick and the Wed. In this episode, as somebody who is in the middle of planning her wedding right now, this episode really stressed me the fuck out. Guys, I'm really glad that I don't have any money in some ways because of things like this. And I don't have some sort of like weird reputation that I have to protect. And just a lot of the concerns that seem to be really a thing for many people are not a factor for me at all. And in a way that can be so much easier. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am Natasha. Thank you so much to Rachel for commissioning this episode. And I am kind of laughing because I realized that I watched this episode the first time weeks ago, right after the last Veronica Mars episode. I watched it. So when I went back and I was looking, I was like, did I watch this one already? Because it had been such a long time. And I had to because for some reason, the wedding plot didn't make much of an impression on me, I have to admit. It was everything that went on with Logan that for some reason I remembered a lot better. And I don't really know why that's the thing that stuck with me more. But I guess the case of the week is just, it tends to not be as interesting for me in general on this show. There are a few exceptions. If it's dealing with an issue in particular that I find interesting, or if there's a really compelling character, but it's really the through lines, the plots that continue on from episode to episode that get me invested. And in terms of the individual, whatever it is that she's working on for the short term, that tends to go out of my head a lot more easily. So the title, even though I'd watched it already, when I saw the title, The Quick and the Wed, I was like, what? Did I watch this? Because Hulu said watched at the bottom. And I was like, I don't think so. So did not remember. So, all right, I'm going to back up a little bit. The beginning of this episode is Veronica and her father talking about what she found in the airplane hangar. And that it was definitely explosives that were marked C4 and detonators. And her father just has this expression on his face when she's telling him this, because it's obviously pretty much the worst possible news that he put all of his eggs into this basket that seems to be totally guilty. He bought into the idea that this guy was innocent. And as of right now, it looks like that's not actually true. Now, I, of course, as a viewer, hear that explosives were just left out in this really obvious place. And I'm like, no, absolutely not. This was planted, of course. But I understand in the moment why it feels like it's an Occam's razor sort of thing. Do we think that there's a huge conspiracy to implicate this one guy? Or do we think that maybe he's just guilty, And it's a lot easier to believe the second one. And even as she's saying this, she's trying to be well, maybe he has a legitimate reason for having this stuff. And he's like, well, maybe trout fishing. Definitely drop some C4 into the water. No problem. And he goes to Sheriff Lamb with this information. Now, this is really the main thing that I keep having an issue with, and I totally understand Keith's perspective here, and I'm not even trying to say that he isn't doing the right thing, but I don't like him updating Lamb incrementally every time he finds out a new piece of information. I really want Keith to keep things to himself until he has formulated something really ironclad. And as much as it may feel like the discovery of this C4 is ironclad, all he has to do is continue asking questions for one more day before he starts to realize that things aren't really adding up. And it would have been a lot smarter, I think, to just keep this shit to himself until he had done this sort of questioning and made sure that what it looked like was actually what it was. Because as much as I understand the Occam's razor and the simplicity of just believing maybe this guy's just guilty, I also feel like Keith isn't new to the investigative world, and he has to understand better than any of us how often things can look one way and actually be a different way. So I don't know. I got really frustrated that he kept on updating Lamb on every little new development before really following it through, as somebody who will be in conversation with people, going back to the wedding planning that I've done this past week, I have been really resisting constantly emailing the people that I had appointments with while I was in Orlando with like, okay, I'm going to be there this day. Wait, no, I might not. No, I decided to go after all. Oh, my friend's coming with me. Oh, wait, my friend's not coming with me. Like, just don't bother people with the information until you've got it nailed down so that they don't have to keep track and constantly revise their plans either. But anyway, Lamb has like the most predictable reaction to this, which is just like, yeah, the guy that you were defending, I absolutely am so shocked that he might be guilty. That is really crazy. Wow. / sarcasm. Like, it's just the smuggest reaction, which of course anybody could have predicted. So he just really just like kind of shits all over Keith, and Keith just leaves with the same feeling that he's been having, which is, I feel like I have to do this, but also, why do I talk to this guy? Which really, you shouldn't. And then we go to the opening of a show on the Entertainment Network called Tinseltown Diaries. And it's a story about Logan and his family and what happened with all of them. And it is focusing mostly on his father, Aaron Eccles, but eventually gets to him and the way that, he's taking after his father in, like, according to the way this is framed with the manslaughter charges and everything. There's a wedding photo in here of Aaron and, his wife on the show, who is apparently his wife in real life. And I'm super duper curious if that is an actual wedding photo of the two of them from their actual in real life wedding, because I love details like that when it turns out that they're just like, well, we just have a picture. Let's just use that. And, we have the whole like story about his adultery being exposed, and the way that like it was, everybody supposed that it was these other women, but then it turns out to be like an underage girl. And the whole thing it is incredibly seedy and really like this would be in the headlines. Well, I was going to say for weeks, but we have such a fast news cycle now, and people get bored so easily at this point because of the way things are structured. It might not hang on for as long, but yeah. We have an interview with him, and he's talking to this reporter, and he says, do you really think that you've done nothing wrong? And he says, I've made mistakes, but I swear on my life, I did not kill Lily Kane. Which I didn't realize he was straight up denying that he committed this murder. Like, now that the tape is lost, the tape of the two of them having sex, I guess it feels like it strengthens his case. The only people who actually watched the tape, well, the cops watched it, though, because they had it in their custody and then it disappeared. Because I was going to say, is Veronica Mars, who, in terms of, like, being somebody of character that the defense could attack, she's kind of a prime target in terms of her having done shady stuff that they could point to make her testimony kind of lose credibility. And then there's Duncan, who is missing and gone forever, assuming. And I was going to say that that's it, but if the cops all saw it, okay, so did the cops just not make a copy of this? Is that not a thing that is done? I understand that the film itself, like the actual object, is evidence, but I just really can't with the fact that they maybe just didn't actually make a copy of it, because I feel like that feels sort of bare minimum. But okay. And when the camera turns around, it's Logan hanging out with Dick. And Logan's like saying, can we watch something else? To which Dick, in his infinite sensitivity, is just like, come on, don't you want to see how it ends? And I was just like, oh God, dude, I hate you so much. And Logan is clearly fucked up over it. Like, he's looking at a picture of him and his family, and his mother fucking killed herself, it seems. Like, that's just really, it's just so not on Dick's, I don't even want to say radar. It's just like he doesn't care. He just doesn't care about his friend, is really what it comes down to. And I as much as like Logan irritates me, he has just been through so fucking much that for the way that he's decided to handle things, in some ways it feels like the least like horrible path that he could have taken. Hugabug says Logan saw the tape as well. Right. And he's not, like, again, he's not going to be credible. Nobody's going to listen to him when he's like facing charges for manslaughter himself. And I bet, if anything, him trying to act like he saw it, the defense could turn into him trying to frame his dad because he's capable of murder and he's the one who did it, actually. Back in 2006, digitizing wasn't as easy back then. Plus, Lamb was the sheriff, not exactly competent. True. How many times did Veronica break into their evidence locker? Yeah, you'd really think that they would be better about that. Hugabug says, also, I think when Leo sold the film to Logan, he made sure he grabbed all of the copies. Otherwise, what is the point in stealing it all? Yeah, I guess it's true. Because, like, what I was thinking, Hugabug, was that they would have a copy and they'd have it, like, on a hard drive somewhere. But I guess they could have all the evidence like in the same locker. And yeah, I just really want this investigation to be taken more seriously and handled better. But we keep being reminded that Neptune's police force is not really up to snuff in general. Like, there's a point later on when they're talking about the incorporation of the town and the fact that they'll get actual police. So I guess this is meant to be like a symptom of that the investigation is just handled really badly. But yeah, and we get some reminders as viewers of the bum fights that Logan participated in. And I kind of appreciated this in a way because there are really a lot of shows that will start off making a character kind of unforgivable or just like irredeemably shitty. And then they sort of realize that they want to do something else and they backtrack and change. They have the character develop, but they don't really address what this character did and make it so that we're supposed to like them in an unqualified sort of way. I feel that way, for example, about Rollo from Vikings. There's a thing that happens in the very first episode, which is like never really brought up again and treated as like, it doesn't matter. But they sort of just act like, well, we didn't really know who he was as a character yet. So we had him do this thing, but we kind of regret it. And we're just going to pretend that didn't happen. And I like that this show is addressing it. And reminding us like, yeah, he's done some real shitty things. It's not too surprising that people don't trust him and have feel a way about him, you know, because it can be easy, especially with the length of time, the actual time between these episodes coming out. from when the bum fight actually happened on the show to when this episode aired has to have been over a year, right? So it would be very easy for the audience to kind of forget about some of the more shitty things that Logan has done. And I enjoy that the show is pointing that stuff out and not shrinking away from it. Those of you who watched Gossip Girl, you'll know that there is a character who like attempts to rape a girl on that show and then is sort of turned into like a romantic, like, I don't want to say hero, but there you are supposed to sympathize with him. And it took a while for them to ever address what he did in the very beginning of the show. And I always kind of felt like once they finally did it, it had taken so long that I kind of didn't really buy it anymore and felt like they were just doing it because they realized that like they had to. But it didn't feel like the show itself was aware of what they had done in terms of making a character that was a rapist, probably because he doesn't succeed, but it's implied that he has done this before and succeeded. Into like a main character that we're meant to sympathize with and like. So they're just really like going all in here, and it's understandable when the camera goes in on the screen and then turns around again, and we're with Heather is her name, the girl that he's seeing, and her mother, who is just like, I cannot believe that this is the fucking guy you're seeing. Like, this is the dude? Are you serious? Like, how can you be interested in somebody with this kind of background? And of course, this is one of those things where it's like when parents react this way, it's totally understandable, but also like you are just so doing the exact thing that's going to make this person more interesting to your child. Like, if you act unimpressed and just like, oh yeah, he seems real tough and edgy, like, but you, as a parent, you can't be that kind of detached. That's just not how it really works as far as I know, right? So, of course she's expressing disbelief, disappointment, horror. And then they have them asking him about the sex tapes. My counsel's requested copies from the prosecution. Where are they? I don't think they exist. And like, he's essentially saying, I think that the police lied about having this evidence, which is bonkers. Like, I don't understand how he can just say that shit and nobody's sort of pushing back on him. At the same time, do the police want to admit that somebody just straight up stole evidence and that they're so bad at their jobs that can happen? Like, maybe they don't want to be public about that. And then he just straight up blames Duncan and talks about how Duncan fled the country and why would he do that if he was actually innocent. And it's really just like so shameless. So we go to Veronica, who is watching this same broadcast at the coffee house where she works. And she realizes that she's been standing in front of the TV with a tray full of coffees and not actually paying attention to anything that she's supposed to be doing. And there is a woman on stage who is singing some karaoke song. I don't even remember what the actual song is. But her name is Heidi, and she is supposed to be getting married the next day. And they're all talking about how, you know, wild she's being, and, oh, she's singing I Want You to Want Me. That's right. And how sort of just like, she's unsettled, you know, like she's one of those people that it just feels like restless and jumps from one thing to another. And she is very impulsive and doesn't really think it through first. And, you know, she's on stage, like doing this like hip thrusting performance in this like mini skirt and tiny tube top. And it is honestly pretty great. She seems like she would be super fun to hang out with, and I enjoyed her a great deal. So she comes down to hang out with her friends, and she's like obviously having a really good time. And later on, it turns out that some shit has happened. The ring that she's wearing, which is a key to knowing the situation that this lady is in, is insane. It's a giant, I think, like weird triangular diamond, or maybe it's just like a square and it was a weird angle of the camera. But yeah, that shit was at least 2 carats, I think. It was giant. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen a like ring like that in person, but when you come across a diamond that size in person, as much as I don't even really like diamonds, like I have an amethyst engagement ring because I just didn't really want... Diamonds are way overpriced. They're not actually worth that much in the end, which is kind of funny considering how often it's a thing like in jewel heists that we want the diamonds. But and they are, in my opinion, kind of generic. You know, everybody's got the same clear stone ring. And it's boring to me. But when you see a diamond this size in person, it really does make you stop and go like, oh my God, I've never actually really seen a diamond before. Like there were a lot of women when I worked at Whole Foods that had rings this size, unsurprisingly. And they would just like be like opening their wallets and stuff. And I would just be like staring at it transfixed, because the idea that somebody would just wear that or like as their regular daily jewelry was just something that I could not wrap my brain around. But yeah, so these ladies are having a lovely time, and Veronica is trying to kind of be cool about it, despite the fact that it seems like she's feeling a little bit, impatient, I would say. Like that's how it is whenever you are in the service industry and you are dealing with people who are drunk and you are not, and you are meant to be serving them and helping them. It can be a little bit trying. And these women are in a coffee house, but they are pouring out of flasks into the coffee. So it's very clear. And they have like a scavenger hunt of things that they're trying to do for the evening. And one of them is to get a man's underwear. I don't know if any of you guys have this list available to you. But if you have a list from this show for this game, I would love it if you would post it in the group, because I low-key most definitely want to play this game. I don't know if I'll get a chance. The way that my wedding is going to be like, you know, kind of a destination wedding, it might not work out with having a bachelorette party the normal way. But I am not going to lie. This seems like it would be really, really fun, and I am interested. So let's just say that. So the next day, one of the girls at the party comes up to Veronica, and I'm sorry, I don't remember this character's name, because the woman who goes missing is Heidi, but I don't remember her sister's name. And she tells Veronica that this girl did not come home. Like she was, and her wedding is coming up. Like she says her cell phone goes right to voicemail. We checked all of the hospitals. My sister's great, but she's kind of a dingbat sometimes. And the assumption here isn't even really so much that like something terrible happened to her, but maybe she just did something without really thinking through that, which, as she puts it, I'm afraid she's just having a Heidi moment and she's going to mess up her life. So yeah, we're going into this, like, not with the assumption that there's foul play necessarily, but just that she's like maybe run off with some guy. Like all of a sudden they talk about how she had a tattoo on her ass after having been dating a guy for only 2 weeks of his name, which is just, guys, as a very cautious person, I cannot imagine making that kind of decision. And she talks about the reception for the wedding being 500 people. Guys, I literally don't even know 500 people. Like, I cannot imagine a wedding of this size. And like, I understand that this guy has tons of money, and when you have that kind of money, you naturally have to have a lot of networking going on with various businesses. And so there's going to be a ton of people that you invite that you're not even friends with, your business partners with, but it would be rude to not invite them. Nevertheless, that's insane to me. And like, what venue can provide a reception for 500 people? Like, you really limited. Even with like 100 people, there are a lot of places that can only go up to like 80, you know? I just can't, like, when she said that, and she says it in such an offhand way. Well, and then the reception for 500, because they're talking about, you know, that there's going to be this like very small ceremony that's immediate family only. But it's 3 days away. So it's understandable why her sister is starting to freak out. So then we cut to Sheriff Lamb, and he's talking about how they issued an arrest warrant for Terrence, but that they have not tracked him down yet. And later on, this dude is breaking into Ms. Dumas's house, and her father winds up shooting him. And I really have no fucking idea what it was that he could have been after in that house. I've got no theories. Like, there are times where I'm kind of like, maybe it's this, and it's vague, but at least I'm like, I have no clue. I really have nothing. But for now, Terrence is still missing. And Keith is watching this because it's like a press conference, and he gets a call from Veronica asking him to look into Heidi's phone records, the activity on her credit card, all of this stuff. So then we have a interesting little sidebar with Veronica and Logan. And I know that the show has to have her talking to him about this because, like, Veronica's sort of the conscience of some people and also the main character, so she needs to be involved in a way. But her constantly, like, sort of getting on Logan's case about the fact that he's dating this girl for ulterior motives, I was low-key kind of like, Veronica, mind your own business. Like, does it suck that he's doing this? Yes. But also, like, people have got to, like, worry about themselves. And if I just sort of like a couple of times was just like, lady, you need to just like back off. But yeah, she says toying with a sweet little girl's heart just to screw with her dad. I get it. And says San Quentin's isn't quite as enticing as, say, college. But damn, you've really plumbed new depths. And the thing is, I think what irritated me about her sort of getting in his business in this regard isn't even about this isn't your business who he's dating. Really what it's about to me is that he's literally going to go to prison for essentially murder. It's manslaughter, but like when you hear a person went to jail for manslaughter, do you really like hear that they went to jail for manslaughter and not immediately think they killed a person? And that's sort of the same in your mind. Like, let's be real here. Unless you get very specific details about what happened, you sort of tend to have the same gut reaction. And I cannot blame him for manipulating somebody in this way, which, while maybe she'll get hurt, I do feel is ultimately not harmless, but like not that harmful, depending on where he takes things. When their life and their reputation forever is on the line. And that's not to say that Logan hasn't got privilege that would absolutely cushion the fall. You know, of course he does. It's not like his life would be forever ruined. But I don't blame him for feeling like galled by the fact that he's being pinned for this thing that he really is pretty much positive he did not do. And finding out that this dude like is providing false testimony, I'm just really not that mad at Logan. Like, it's shady, yes, but also fucking, you know, Jesus, what the fuck is he supposed to do? Like, maybe if you don't want your daughter to be hurt, don't go around like falsifying testimony and getting into bed with what amounts to like a drug cartel. So we go to Veronica, and she's interviewing the friends, and this is when they talk about, what Heidi's attitude is like, that she's an act now, think later type. And one of the women says that she lost her cell phone, I think. They are discussing the fact that, like, she tried to get her tattoo removed, and she succeeded in the end. But it took 6 weeks for her to sleep with Paul because she was in the middle of getting it removed. And because of this, like, lag time between them meeting and her actually sleeping with him, Paul is under the mistaken impression that she is somewhat modest and circumspect sexually. And it had nothing to do with that. It was purely because she was trying to hide her shame and wait until that was, like, the evidence of it was removed before she slept with him. So they are all sort of like laughing behind their hands at the fact that this guy she's about to marry has a really mistaken impression of who his wife is. And this is one of those things that, like, I don't feel that any partner is under an obligation to tell their new partner how many people they've slept with or too much of their sexual history, unless it is something that is really relevant. For example, if they have an STD and they can't get rid of it and they're just interested in being like, so this is what happened, or, whatever. Or if there is some trauma due to that, but otherwise, as much as I think it's important to be as honest as you can with your partner, I don't feel like when you decide you're going to commit to somebody, that they have the right to demand that information from you. However, there's a difference between not being interested in sharing your whole sexual history and pretending to be a very different type of person. And that's one of those things that some people do without really intending it. Like, there's a couple of ways you act like a different person in a relationship. One of those ways is what I think is going on with Heidi, where she meets a guy and it seems like she kind of wants to be the person that they think she is. And she unintentionally takes on whatever it is that they're putting out there because she is still trying on different hats in terms of her personality and hasn't really decided who she wants to be. And she tends to, like, adapt to whatever that particular guy wants to see. And I have absolutely done that, like, a couple of times in different relationships, like, just been a very different type of person. So I sympathize with that because especially when you're young, you don't really know yourself so well. Heidi's a little old for this to still be going on, but I still kind of get it. And then there's people who straight up are manipulating somebody into caring about them by actively pretending to be somebody else. And that's a whole other thing. And the problem is that the result is the same, whether or not you actually intend to be somebody else, or it happens because you're just not really good at knowing who you are. In the end, when you're with somebody, they start to see who you actually are, and it does not match who they thought they were with. And that leads to, inevitably, problems. And I just kind of feel for Heidi in that as long as she hasn't figured it out, who she is and what she wants, she'll keep running into this same sort of problem over and over again because she just, we have our patterns. And I feel like I relate to her in some ways in that because I only now with Owen feel like I understand who I am as a person a lot better. And I really feel like when I'm with him, I am being who I am. But when I look back at the way that I was in previous relationships, I was not who I am. I was unsure and definitely guarding my behavior a lot and second guessing myself all the time and generally sort of like aware of myself in an outside sort of distanced way. So yeah, the whole conversation, it's like one of those things where it's not like her friends don't like her. It's more that they know who she is, better than she seems to. And they are a little impatient with her being as immature as she is. And, you know, because their talk, I think, could come across as being kind of almost catty. But there is a certain affection and like eye rolling of like, oh, that's just her, you know. It doesn't feel like they're being super judgy about it in a way that feels like malicious or negative. It just is more that we have tried to talk to her about it, but like you can't change a person. So we accept her for who she is, even though who she is kind of a disaster. Which, I mean, we all kind of have a friend like this in our lives, right? Somebody that we're like, I love her, but yeah, she's got issues. So they talk about packaged meat, which is the name of the all-male review we took her to. That there was a guy creeping her out at the Happy Horseshoe. She said she'd seen him before and that he was following her, and she had the bouncers kick him out. Spoiler alert, it turns out that this is Vinny. And anytime that Vinny shows up on this show, I am fucking delighted because he is just such a goober. And we find out much later that Vinny was hired to keep an eye on her behavior. And there's a whole thing that happens. So we'll get there. But Veronica manages to track him down by seeing his shirt in a photo and going to the bowling alley because she can tell that it's like a bowling shirt and looking for people in that same shirt. And when she sees Vinny, she's just kind of like, oh, there it is. Okay, I think I'm starting to like zero in on exactly what was going on. So she goes to Heidi's apartment with Heidi's sister to investigate what it was that could have like made her disappear. And there's all this stuff that's out. There's 2 wine glasses. One of them is broken. And there's like a towel on the floor. And we find out later that the first wine glass broke. And so Heidi got a second one. But understandably, Veronica sees this and figures that like there were 2 glasses and maybe there was a struggle and that broke the second one. You know, like she, of course, is trained. I say trained. I don't know how much trained, but she does see things through the lens of maybe something bad happened here. And that's totally understandable because with women, that tends to happen. She left a complete disaster. So she tries to be like, can you tell if she packed a bag or if things are missing? And her sister just laughs in her face and it's just like, you're kidding, right? I have no idea what's in this apartment. This place is a mess. Like, who knows? So then we cut to Kendall and Beaver. And there is this weird thing going on. He says, I got 6 more properties added to the Phoenix Land Trust portfolio, 2 of which are beachfront. You would not believe the deals I've gotten. And she says, well, do they really think that your dad is behind this still? Like they are really buying this? And he just sort of shrugs and is like, evidently, you know, he sort of says it like, let them, as if he isn't actually lying to them, but he knows that's the impression that they're getting, and he doesn't want to disabuse them of that. She says, I heard that the Kane house is going up for sale. And he says it's the wrong side of town. All the deals are south. And she says, I think we should buy it. And he says, what have I told you about thinking? And I was like, Beaver, what are you fucking saying? Oh my God. And she like kind of makes a joke out of it and is like, then it makes my breast smaller. And then says, have you ever considered maybe I'm the clever one? And that this like delightful packaging is actually a means for like getting at my enemies, outwitting my adversary. And he laughs and says, consider it. I'm banking on it. And she seems a little taken aback by that. And then tries to another ploy, and well, have you considered maybe I'm your adversary? And says my name's on everything, right? And he says, oh, yes, it is. And it's a nice little play because she's trying to make it like, look, it's all in my name. Like, I'm really the one with the power here. To which Beaver rightfully is like, yeah, your name's on everything. Be careful. And honestly, she really should have thought of that. It seems like that hadn't occurred to her until this instant. So it turns out that what they're going to try and do is like get Aaron Eccles to invest in what they're doing. And obviously what they're doing seems to be pretty shady. I don't know what Beaver's up to specifically, but it feels like it has all of the hallmarks of we're pretending to have capital we don't have. We're pretending to be in a strong position that we are not in order to gain the confidence of people to give us their properties, their investment money, their whatever. I don't know if it's just because we need income, but I really don't honestly know a lot about how real estate works and what they're planning on doing. Are they trying to flip things? Are they trying to are they going to try and make like a deal with the town? Does it have something to do with the what do they call it? Integration? No. The thing that they're talking about later on. I'm really not sure what the overall con is here. And it's just weird that Beaver's the one that's heading it up. I mean, he's the smart one out of him and Dick anyway, which is not much of a competition. But I don't know the goal. So, okay. We have Logan talking to his lawyer, and his lawyer is basically like, dude, you need to stop trying to act like you're going to be able to plead guilty and just like claim it was self-defense or whatever. Like, you are very, very smug, very, very rich. You have a bad reputation. There's a lot of people out there who have personally been on the receiving end of some of your trash, garbage behavior. And you just don't really stand much of a chance against a jury. Like, you just look like shit. And the guy who's up against you, while we know he's a cokehead, he's very well respected in this community. And his word is just going to carry more weight than yours, whether it should or not. Like, that's just how it goes. So you're going to have to get used to the idea that you are spending at least some time in prison. Like, there's no way that you are going to be able to get out of here unscathed. You need to know that. So this makes Logan more determined than ever. And jumping ahead, we have Veronica and Wallace talking over her case and, you know, what could have happened to this girl, tracing her credit cards to the area that they are in, and they discover her car. And it's like, again, when you look back, the car is here, and it's not necessarily, like, Wallace says her car in the middle of nowhere. But later on, when they're talking to Heidi, she's like, my car that was just parked in a parking lot with other cars. Like, she's like, it wasn't abandoned on the side of the road or in the middle of a field or something. It was a perfectly reasonable place for my car to be. So Veronica, you know, kind of hinges a lot, assuming that something happened to her on this. But yeah, it turns out to kind of be nothing. And the police, when she gets in touch with them, feel that it's not 48 hours and there's no reason to get worried about this girl yet. So she finds another camera in the car. And then we go to Keith, and he's going to the Magic Touch, like, car detailing and mechanic. And this guy is the one that works for, what's his name, who they found the explosives on, Terrence. And he tells Keith that he has the exact same standing appointment for servicing the cars in that hangar every week, I think. And he was in that exact cabinet where they claim to have found these explosives just the day before. And there were no explosives in there of any kind. You know, he's like, and it's not like I'm super familiar with them, but I feel like I'd know them if I saw them. So no, there was not anything like that at all. I just want to say that this mechanic is really doing it for me and just has a bit of a look that I kind of like, and I'm just like kind of into it. So what's up? And this is what, you know, gives him Keith, the inkling that shit is not what it looks like. He tries to sort of poke holes in it a little bit, like being like, you go at the same time every week. And the dude is like, yeah, like Terrence literally notices if I'm late, even if he's not there, he will check in on me. Like, so yeah. So Veronica gets all of these photos from this other camera, developed. And this is what leads her to talking to Vinny. The scene with Aaron and Kendall is really funny to me. Because he says something about, like, because she's saying, I want to get you in on this business opportunity, whatever. And he says something about how Big Dick still has his fingers in a lot of pies. And she responds with, I hear he's working abroad. And I was just like, I hate you all so much. So loaded. I hate it. So uncomfortable. Aaron is just such a creep that him, like, watching her slowly unzip her blouse or her jacket or cardigan or whatever the fuck is happening there. It's just got this whole, like, just seedy, creepy, gross vibe. He's just so nasty. Yeah, the whole conversation comes down to him asking Kendall to make a visit to his son's hotel room. And I don't know what it is he's after here, other than maybe the tapes, if he has an inkling that Logan has them. But I feel like he's got to know Logan's not using them. I don't know if he, like, doesn't trust it and think Logan's going to produce them at a particular moment to try and fuck him. But that's all I can think, is that he wants to get his hands on them and actually destroy them to make sure that they just don't exist. But I really don't know why he would think Logan is the one who has them. I don't know. You know, I don't know exactly what's happening here. But yeah. Meanwhile, Logan is at this, like, convenience store, and a couple of biker kids who assume that he is the one who killed Felix spit on him, and it's pretty gross. And then we go to Logan, who goes to the study in Heather's mom's house and sends an email from her mother's address to her father, saying that she found condoms in Heather's room. It is Heather, right? I keep saying it. I'm, like, not even positive. And essentially he is trying to up the ante regarding his relationship so that it will make her father more willing to make a deal, because he is desperate to get his daughter away from Logan before anything, like, actually happens. So he's, like, really doing his best to make himself seem like bad news. And Heather is just defending him the whole time, like in the kitchen to her mother. And it's sort of awful because, you know, he's doing what he can in order to create leverage for himself. But he also has to listen to this girl who trusts him and likes him and is beginning to really care about him speak up for him. And that sucks. That's, you know, that's brutal. So Veronica goes and talks to Vinny and is trying to ask him who hired him and yada, yada, yada. And he is not answering any of her questions because that is PI client privilege. Now, if you'll excuse me, my ducks need me. But, you know, she has an inkling at this point because of him being involved at all that probably it is the groom that's like looking into things. And Keith goes to Sheriff Lamb to try and tell him that, like, oh, never mind about Terrence. But dude, like, he's like, well, why would he keep his C4 in such an obvious place? Maybe you should have thought of that, Keith, before you ran off and told this guy every little thing. Like, dude, you kind of have nobody but yourself to blame on jumping the gun on this, like, really hard. And this is where he finds out that Terrence was shot trying to break into this house. There's the incorporation of the town. That's the word I was looking for. Not integration, incorporation. And, you know, the discussion about what that will do to the value of property in the town. And the fact that the rich will become richer. The fact that there are a lot of companies that, like, he names off, and he's talking about, like, the potential because he says the Palo Alto in the heart of Silicon Valley, home to Stanford University, Hewlett Packard, and the epicenter of the late 90s technology boom. But before the whole .com craze began, Palo Alto was a diverse community not unlike our Neptune. When they incorporated, they effectively put up a wall between the economic classes, and what resulted after a very short time was an ultra-rich center surrounded by the crime capital of America. Those who were smart dumped their unincorporated property to suckers before the bottom fell out. Property values in the city skyrocketed while land outside the incorporation became worthless. And meanwhile, Beaver's like watching this very closely with a lot of curiosity because he has some investment in this at this point. As you can see, the younger Mr. Casablancas has extended his league. This is a young man with true business acumen. And he seems very gratified because, you know, there's more riding on this than anybody in that class actually knows. So Keith calls Veronica and tells her that the bride used her phone twice this morning and called somebody named Paul Mann. And she's like, oh yeah, that's her fiance. So is she just like in town and hiding from her family? And he's like, it has to be cold feet. And Veronica isn't really buying this explanation. So she calls back the number, and it turns out that it's actually a fax machine sound. And she goes back to the sister's apartment and finds a fax from an ex-boyfriend inviting her to a show. And when Veronica tracks down the bride at this show, she's expecting her to be like cheating. And it's not as simple as that. This girl has sort of like reconnected to this dude in a more intense way, but she had been set up in the first place. So it worked really, really well in that they would have had, if Veronica had not gotten involved, they would have gotten precisely what they wanted, because as it turns out, she's being set up by the family to go and be with this guy so that they have the leverage to break off the engagement without incurring any sort of penalty. And we'll get to why they're incurring a penalty in a second. But yeah, so Veronica is talking to her and she's like, you know, you're supposed to be getting married in 12 hours and your sister is super worried about you. And everybody thought that maybe you had just like completely like bailed on the wedding, but then we found your car abandoned. And this is when she's talking about like 30 feet from the bus station. Are you serious? Maybe you should stick to making coffee, which I was like, ooh, shit. I came to see Nick because his mom is in bad shape and he needed me. I called Paul, but he didn't return my call. Then I got these text messages from my friend Kim telling me she saw him leaving his ex's place at dawn. And Paul, like, basically he is the one that's likely cheating, but he's trying to set it up that she is the one cheating so that he can get out of this. Veronica asks how he sent a fax, this guy that is sitting right next to her. And he's like, yeah, I didn't actually send that. I didn't question you showing up because I was really glad that you came and I was happy to see you, but it wasn't me. Which I was just like, dude, you really could have piped up with that like at any point in this conversation and you just waited. Come on. So we jump ahead to the actual wedding ceremony where the groom is standing there waiting for her to arrive. And he's like, oh, yeah, she'll be here any moment. She's just a free spirit marching to her own drum. But he does seem way too serene. And when she finally pops up, you can tell that he's shocked that she has actually shown. And his parents look at one another in a deeply disapproving manner. He asks where she's been with a really aggressive tone that belies how completely carefree he was just a moment ago. And I love the way she's asking this. She was like, she says, first of all, lay it on me, preacher man. Like she's got this very lackadaisical attitude because she knows what's going on here and is just kind of like calling his bluff and really enjoying it. I didn't ask what you were doing for your bachelor party. And after finding whipped cream in your underwear, I think I was entitled. And he says, entitled? You, the one who sexed up every wannabe rock star in Southern California? If I wanted to, what does he say? If I wanted to marry, I think he says Tammy something. I'm going to find it. If I wanted to marry Tawny Kitayan, I would have got a nipple pierced. I don't know who that is. Is that somebody? Does anybody know? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just seeing that Rachel said that is Harry Hamlin and Lisa Rinna's real wedding photo. Nice. I'm happy to hear that. I kind of wanted it to be. Okay. So yeah, I don't know who that is, but she says, how could you say that to me? Like I would ever sex up a drummer. And I love Veronica off to the side laughing. Lead singers. Yes, maybe the occasional guitar player. The important thing is that we love each other. And he says, how can you expect me to love a used up groupie like you? And she is doing, honestly, her acting in this moment. Ow, honey, kind of harsh. And she still has like the smile on her face because she knows that this is the moment where she wins. Like she's just a step away. But also this is somebody that she had agreed to marry and had no idea that he saw her like this. And there is no way that doesn't hurt to hear, whether or not the person is somebody whose opinion you should care about. It doesn't really change the fact that it takes a minute for you to grow out of caring about their opinion. So I love how she's simultaneously smiling and like almost laughing at him, but also her eyes are very sad and looks like she's like tearing up a little bit. And she says, are you breaking it off? And he says, you're damn right. And his parents chime in no at the same time. And that's when I was like, wait, something. Oh, what's going on here? And she says, so I guess I'll be keeping this precious family heirloom, and pulls off that giant fucking ring because those are the rules in polite society, aren't they? I mean, if I backed out or didn't show up, I'd have to give you the ring back, right? But you know the funny thing? You could have just said, it's over, and I would have given you the ring back. This will be payment for the 2 years I wasted trying to convince you I was worthy. And enjoy the reception, she yells to everybody, which honestly, she's kind of a like MVP in this episode. I don't know how I like forgot about this subplot, but yeah. And it turns out that it was the parents who did the background check, but once they got the information, it was the son who couldn't live with it. And she says, our pawn shop's open on Saturdays. And I really wonder how much she winds up getting for this ring. Because obviously it's a giant diamond, so it's a very different situation than the one that I was in. But when I divorced, the ring that had cost nearly $3,000 in the jewelry store was worth like about $350. So I get the feeling that this friggin' happens like talking to another friend of mine who knows a lot about jewelry, she confirmed my suspicions that diamonds are just not worth what we think they are. But I will take it on faith that the show, that she is meant to be like really coming out ahead here. So, Rachel says, no luck finding the scavenger hunt from this ep, but there are definitely scavenger hunts available on Etsy. Also, I have to go to a meeting, so I have to miss the end today. Oh no, bye Rachel, but thank you for coming. Okay, so then we have the Kendall and Logan talking, and she's trying to convince him to invest, and he's like, I thought you were joking about real estate and you were just going to come and have sex with me, but you're talking and you still have your clothes on, so I guess you really are here for what you said. And she asks if it's okay if she freshens up before she leaves and goes into the bathroom, and he gets distracted by the arrival of Heather's dad. And Heather his dad convinces him to break up with Heather, and she leaves, but I assume she got what she came for because she seems very pleased with herself, as she leaves. So yeah, Logan agrees to dump this girl, and then he winds up... Well, first there's Vinny, I forgot about this, who runs into Veronica at the coffee shop. And he says, you cost me a $5,000 bonus, because she was supposed to just not show up. And the fact that she did and managed to get the drop on the groom fucked him up. I called you, left a threatening message on Kim's cell phone, and can you please give me the phone back because I know you have it. And he tells her, you didn't get it from me. And it's a kind of a cute moment. I just really like it how the two of them are not really, they aren't actually friends, but she kind of does respect him a little bit in a weird way. She admits that he's actually pretty good at his job. And I believe the episode ends with Veronica running into Logan. Oh yeah, he says, I know you're busy, but I think I've done something horrible. And I really fell for that. It turns out that what he seems to mean here is just that I shouldn't have messed with this girl and I feel really bad about it. And I actually do care about her, and I'm in a fucking state now. I feel like that's what he means, but the vibe of this, initially, I was just did you actually hurt another person? I just after stopping to think about it, I was no, I feel like they're just trying to be he regrets what happened with his girl. But yeah, I guess we'll find out. So thank you all so much for listening. Thank you, Rachel, again for commissioning this, and I will see you again soon with a new episode. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.